So, we are returning to the wonderful land of Siracusa, but none of that really matters. Yeah, I hope you enjoyed this return to not Italy, but we have more important things to comment on. No, it is not the PC client, but the ability to change the text size in-game. Could it be better? Yes, absolutely. I would prefer, instead of the 3 options that we got, that we would have the ability to adjust the text size to our own preference. It is, however, a good step towards not blinding myself while reading. With that cover though, I suppose we can talk about Siracusa a little bit. So let me stop beating around the bush and just say it. I did not care for The Godfather. It insisted upon itself. This is mostly how I feel about Siracusa. If not for the presence of penance, this nation would be worthless to me. Irene is pretty good, and if my beloved Ingrid was the main focus alongside Suzerain and Suzudad, the region would rank among the best, but as it stands, I simply don't care for Vigil and his ex-lover's quarrel. However, as I do in all things, I shall not allow my disinterest to cloud my judgment. You come to me for my unbiased takes and opinions, so that when I tell you who to love and who to hate, you know that it comes purely from an unbiased textual analysis. Speaking of things that I am in no way biased against, the Signori de Lupi. Those fraudulent bums aren't present this time, so Crossing has that going for it at the very least. Fuck you, Zaro. Keep yourself safe. Since our last look into Siracusa in I Portatori dei Veluti, 2 years have passed and Nuova Volsini has become a city like many others. Having cast off the influence of the old families, the city has left everything up to fairness. However, things are not perfect. Instead of the mafia, the Siracusan city has been assailed by a far worse evil: capitalism. Companies from Colombia and Casimiras have entered the market and are playing the game far better than most of the locals. Thankfully for mafia-run businesses, they understand who you know is more important than what you know. However, it's not like these new arrivals are playing fair. Underhanded deals and using liars to find loopholes in the new and untested policies has allowed them in the last 2 years to begin taking out the competition. With Laetania also poking their nose into Siracusa, the city of Nuova Volsini stands at a crossing. And, with the title of this event finally said, we can jump into things. As I've already told you, under the new Urban Management Act, the city has seen a massive influx of foreign investment, best symbolized with the now renowned Golden Prairie winery. The Golden Prairie has made its way to Siracusa from Casimiras under the ownership of one Sharek Radoslav. With the backing of Casimiras' General Chamber of Commerce, calling his pockets deep would be a bit of an insult. As such, he's put together a little festival for the city, the Red Wine Championship, seeking to name one of the many wineries in the city as the best of the best. Of course, this may or may not be a little rigged, but such is the nature of business. Outside the venue, Lapland's former goons Gambino and Capone are busy walking security for Charek. Since Ingrid put their last boss Antonio on a t-shirt, they have once more thrown their lot in with a new businessman. Hopefully one who is not committing as many crimes as their previous employers. Completing their search of the outside, the two head back in. Within the theater, Charek is hyping up the event, making sure to thank the benevolent work of the city's mayor Vigil. With Vigil taking the stage with the businessman, Charek thanks him for his good work turning the city into one where all businesses can thrive without the interference of the mob. Charek invites Schwarzer Verhang Orchestra to take the stage to perform for those in attendance while the wine tasting is being set up. Stepping off the stage, Vigil and Charek run into Dimitri, the one-time friend of Vigil's and current head of Saluzzo Vino, one of Charek's largest competitors. Dimitri asks Charek about the judging criteria and is reassured that it is completely fair, and none of the competitors' less than savory backgrounds shall be held against them. Within the wine cellar, Gambino and Capone contemplate taking a sip of some of the product, but decide against it. While they are there, they notice a Caprine wearing a hood walking through the shelves. They consider investigating, but assume they must be a member of the orchestra. Another blonde Caprine girl follows shortly afterwards, and Gambino recognizes her as the daughter of the head of the orchestra. Considering the case closed, the two don't investigate further. A fatal error. Back among the crowd, Vigil and Dimitri converse. Dimitri refuses to partake of the Casimirian wine, which is rather unusual at a wine tasting, but dismisses it as not liking the smell. Dimitri asks his old friend if he's happy with his current profession, which Vigil is. He still just can't shake being worried for the current state of the city. With the orchestra finishing up, Charek invites its head, Paula Memminger, to act as judge for the competition. 3 beautiful glasses of wine are placed before her, and she samples all of them, savoring the taste as she does so. In the end, she selects the 3rd glass as the winner. Chorok of course steps forward to claim victory, however it was a premature gesture. The wine is in fact a product of the Saluzzo vino. The man quickly regains his composure and congratulates Dmitri on his well-earned victory, despite his wine not being one of the finalists. Chorok, despite all my bad-mouthing, is a good sport and his attention is quickly drawn away from Dmitri anyways. Paula begins to cough. Her daughter notices something is wrong first, but there is nothing she can do. Paula collapses onto the ground and dies. She's been poisoned. All eyes turn to the man of the hour. As a well-known Don, Dmitri is prime suspect. Vigil and the city staff keep the situation under control, but Chorok accuses Dmitri of the crime before everyone. It was after all his wine that she last drank. Dmitri denies this and remains calm despite the accusations, promising his friend that he will comply with the investigation. Chorok has Gambino and Capone drag Dmitri into a vehicle which takes him to the police station. After escorting him away, Gambino makes sure to apologize to Dmitri for the inconvenience. Capone mocks him for this, but Gambino would rather be safe than sorry. Even with all the differences between this city and the rest of Siracusa, the city remains Siracusan. Although, not all problems are the family's fault now. Taking a bit of a step back in time to 1 week before the Red Wine Championship, we get to meet Chorok's niece, Tosia. Don't get it twisted, beneath this friendly exterior is the cold heart of a capitalist. The woman moved to Siracusa following a scandal with the Civil Lance Pegasus. Her old manager was related to one of them, and the KGCC started to throw their weight around by targeting their relatives as they couldn't touch the Knights. Chorok laments his niece's woes, but puts her to good use working as a sales representative for his winery. She's tasked with handing out contracts to stores all across the city. A special shelf display agreement. A fancy title, but its purpose is purely to limit customer choice. Stores that sign up for investment from the Golden Prairie may only display their wine on shelves. As more and more stores sign up, the local industry is being priced out of the market. It helps having a foreign government footing the bill so you can outspend and undercut your competitors. Capitalism working as intended. After dinner with her uncle, Tosia finds herself walking the streets. She runs into a young girl named Bettina who is attempting to sell wine belonging to a local winery named Verdi. She is not doing a fantastic job as Tosia had run into her earlier that day and the girl hadn't sold a single bottle since then. Seeing the despair and agony in the girl's eyes, Tosia asks her how old she is. She's 9, but she's turning 10 next week. Bettina asks Tosia for help, but being the cold-hearted capitalist she is, Tosia refuses to help her business rival. Tosia leaves the girl behind, but feels like she was too harsh and turns back around to check on her. Bettina is standing on the edge of a railing, and Tosia freaks out, thinking she's gonna jump, and dives to save her, promising to teach her her ways. Bettina is happy with that, although she wasn't going to jump. She was just rescuing someone's pet. The two return the pet to its owner, leaving Tosia shocked that Bettina did this out of the kindness of her heart and didn't try to sell anything to the woman. Taking the girl under her wing, Tosia teaches her some fancy buzzwords and slogans that help with her promoting product. Bettina thinks such methods are little better than lying, but Tosia reminds her how the market has shifted since Victorian, Colombian, and Bolivarian wines entered, so these tactics are now necessary. Instead of trying to drop the price to match the foreign investment, they should instead sell the wine as a premium Siracusan product, dressing up the wine to show off the importance of presentation to Bettina. By pure coincidence, a man passing by hears Tosia talking up the wine and pays a huge sum for the bottle before hurrying off to an important meeting. Worried that Verdi's cheap wine will be disastrous for the man's purposes, the two chase him down to apologize. Explaining what they were doing to the man doesn't change a thing. He was once a local before leaving the country to pursue his career. He hasn't spoken to his family in years and hopes the wine that they once enjoyed together will make a good impression on them. Shortly after wishing the man well, the two are approached by a foreign businessman asking if Verdi wine was available for his restaurant. He's a friend of the woman they helped earlier and he heard about their traditional Siracusan wine from her. Although it's a little late to save Verdi's failing business, Tosia is happy to see Bettina selling wine using her own methods. Continuing on with the story of Verdi, it has not been the most stable of Siracusan winery. Being unable to keep up with the rapidly changing industrial nature of the industry has left them struggling to turn a profit for years. Ever since the Golden Prairie entered the market, things have become noticeably worse. The current head of Verdi, Lupina, has been selling most of their grapes to Saluzzo Vino. Elio, one of the workers there, is worried that she's speeding up Verdi's end. Lupina reveals to him that the Golden Prairie had already approached them, showing interest in buying out their equipment and vineyards. It was an offer she couldn't refuse. One of her workers, Niccolo, Bettina's grandfather, is deeply upset by her decision. She is sacrificing her grandfather's legacy, and asserts that while the Casimirian methods might save time in the long run, it fails to maintain the craft behind tending the grapevines. Despite his protests, Lupina believes it is better for Verdi to go out with dignity, rather than slowly collapsing. Niccolo knows her passion was never in the running of a winery, but is still surprised by her callousness. Taking out an invitation to Bettina's birthday, the man takes his leave. Meeting with Dimitri in his private bar, the two discuss the state of Verdi while Lupina plays on the bar's drums. Elio had told Dimitri about her intentions to sell Verdi, and Lupina asked the man to take in her former employees. Dimitri, of course, accepts immediately and wonders what she will do when all is said and done. Niccolo and Elio take the time before the sale to do a bit of sabotage, hoping to prevent or at least delay the acquisition. Arriving the next day, Lupina is shocked to see her equipment broken. There's no time to fix it, and soon after, the Casimirian auditor arrives. During the auditor's inspection, the man finds all these broken things, but it doesn't bother him. Golden Prairie viewed the traditional equipment of Siracusan winemaking as outdated and incompatible with their methods, and as such, their offer had nothing to do with it. They just wanted the land the winery is on. Lupina is left shocked by this, and in what feels like a moment, her winery is sold. After the auditor leaves, Niccolo admits to his sabotage attempt. Lupina doesn't blame him for it, and as it turns out, it didn't affect anything. Lupina knew she was a poor businesswoman, and is glad they broke the equipment as she can at least keep what is broken for herself. Niccolo is sad that his family will not be able to see Verdi, but it was an unsustainable dream. As one last favor, Niccolo asks her to bring a bottle of Verdi that's 10 years old to his granddaughter's birthday, as is the Siracusan tradition. Having sold all of her wine to Golden Prairie, Lupina is unsure how she will pull it off, and receives a letter from Dimitri asking her to meet him in his bar. Upon arriving, she doesn't find Dimitri, but a gift box waiting for her on the drum set. Inside the box is a wine bottle labeled Verdi 1092. Just what she was looking for. Also, because I have to say it, we need Lupina as a playable operator. I'm not going to make any more clarifications on that. If you know, you know. Finally, we reach the point where we can talk about Irene and the Truckers Union. Since the events of I Portatori dei Veluti, the Truckers Union has been integrated into the city's municipal system to better protect its workers from exploitation from the Mafia. However, something far worse is now here to harm them. The Truckers Union is now known as the Transport Safety Agency, the AST. And I must apologize for this pronunciation, as the acronym only makes sense when told in Italian. The Agenzia per la Sicurezza dei Trasporti. And I thought I mispronounced the Lapland event's name badly. Regardless of my failings, the AST has entered into a cooperation agreement with the Golden Prairie, and by extension, the KGCC. A lot of the drivers are pretty happy with this setup. The pay is good, and you don't need to worry about getting dragged into mob business. Unfortunately for the drivers, they are also heavily fined whenever they fail to meet deadlines. Even having a sick day results in docked pay. As such, they have to fill in for each other to make sure everyone gets paid. Everyone pooling their cash to make sure no one goes under has been kept from Irene, as she has been busy enough keeping the AST on track. She's pretty disappointed in her drivers for hiding this from her, but more than that, she is very annoyed to have received a bottle from Saluzzo Vino as a gift. She's not mad that they are still dealing with the Mafia, but that they are taking their problems to Dimitri instead of her. As she's having this discussion with Ruggiero, he receives a call from one of the drivers, Johnny. The Casimirians have slapped an extra fine on his delivery. Irene hears that Johnny is filling in for Sam as he's sick, and the Casimirians change the delivery destination at the last minute. Irene heads over to smooth things out with the Casimirian representative, but they don't budge. This exact situation is stipulated in their contract. Returning to the yard, Irene gets a copy of the contract and begins re-examining it in more detail. While talking with Ruggiero about it, the man accidentally reveals that Dimitri helped Johnny out with some family issues. Irene just takes the contract paperwork and promises that she'll find a way to deal with it. The individual terms of the contract seem reasonable, although when combined together they put unreasonable pressure on the lowest rung of the ladder. Meeting with the Casimirian representative, Irene discusses her concerns with the details of the contract. She seeks to amend it to allow for more flexibility, at least for the time being, while dealing with the increased workload of the Red Wine Championship. The representative agrees to allow more flexibility for individual drivers, agreeing to set aside the recent records for the time being, as long as Irene ensures that the overall efficiency of the deliveries remain high. Irene leaves the meeting with her head held high, but things would not be that easy. One day before the Red Wine Championship, Sam is asked to do a last-minute delivery by Saluzzo Vino. Sam of course agrees and heads on his way. While driving there, Sam narrowly avoids another truck. The truck flips over after crashing, and only then does Sam recognize Johnny's truck. Hopping out to help his friend, he finds Tommaso, the Saluzzo Vino employee who asked him for the delivery, conveniently there to help him when he needs it. The Casimirians hold true to their word and write off the goods as a failed contract, and Johnny will not be punished for it. However, following the murder at the Red Wine Championship, things change. The AST vehicle that delivered the samples for Saluzzo Vino is placed under suspicion as having intentionally caused the crash of the truck carrying the Golden Prairie's wine. After all, it turned out what should have been the wine from the Golden Prairie ended up as Saluto Vino's wine. As such, the Casimirians are going after the one who created the situation that led to the poisoning. The AST is going to have to cover the excessive costs, all while the Casimirian representative invites any interested drivers to sign up directly for them, which tells you what this is really about. Sam tells Irene that he can't pay this much, and if she can't handle it, he'll ask the Ballones to. Unsure of what to do, Irene takes a drive to City Hall. Looking up at the building promising a new future for Siracusa, she picks up her phone and calls Penance. Finally, we move to an event centered fully after the murder of Paula. We focus on those most directly affected by her passing, the Siracusa Hong Orchestra. Paula's adopted daughter Liesel is left to negotiate with Charwick about their continued employment. With their star performer Paula dead, Charwick decides to not renew their contract. Liesel reminds him that they still have 2 more days scheduled, but Charwick has cancelled them. The theatre has been closed to allow for the investigation, which Charwick uses to complain that he's also suffered terrible loss. And due to the clause in their contract that means in the event of force majeure, forcing the termination or cancellation of a performance, the client is not required to pay for the previous performances. The performers do not take the whole situation well when Liesel tells them about it. The others try to comfort Liesel and ask her to head to bed and let them worry about the orchestra's troubles for a while. While standing outside the room where they were talking, Liesel overhears them talking about the situation. Even with all their money piled together, they've at best 15 days rent. The group blamed Dimitri for killing Paula, with one of the members, Timpani, promising to attack any member of his mob if he ever gets the chance. Timpani suggests that they leave Siracusa together and head for Colombia. They might not be able to perform anymore, but they can at least find work there. All are in agreement that no matter what, they will look after Liesel. Leaving them behind after this, Liesel heads for Paula's room. She sorts her mother's things, looking at her unfinished scores, finding her missing earring, looking over the unfinished costume she was planning to wear at their next performance, and admiring her art staff. Paula never had time to teach her all about the arts of Litania, and now she never will. Liesel thinks back on that night, on the hooded figure she spotted in the wine cellar, a Caprine. She realized that it wasn't a Lupo who killed her mother, and begins to suspect that it was one of the other orchestra members in disguise. Her fears are only heightened when she receives a call from the police telling her that 2 of her performers, Timpani and Besson, have been detained. Arriving at the jail, she gets the full story. 2 Colombian businessmen had had too much to drink and began to ask for the mafia suite in a Saluzzo-owned hotel. The 2 Saluzzo men tried to calm them down and remove them from the hotel, which eventually escalated into a fight. Timpani and Besson saw the fight and attempted to de-escalate things, but it resulted in them fighting both parties. Liesel is rendered speechless by this act of charity and her own foolishness in suspecting her compatriots. Liesel has Timpani start a beat for her on the prison bar and introduce herself to the Colombian businessman. She is Liesel, leader of the Siracusa Hong Orchestra, and offers her sincere apologies for the actions of her employees. She knows that the man is the owner of the new mall opening soon, and offers to perform a free and exclusive performance for him on the opening day. The men readily agree, and the whole situation is swept under the rug. A few days later, after a successful performance at the mall, Liesel reveals to her fellow performers that she had seen a Caprine on the day Paula died, and that she will one day bring this murderer to justice. Since the incident at the Red Wine Championship, Charwick has been putting pressure on Vigil to punish Dimitri for his crimes. Vigil pushes back, reminding the man that investigations are underway. Charwick laments his loss in profits, and Vigil tells him that he's heard that businesses from Colombia and Litania have already signed up for next year's championship. This is true, but what Charwick laments is not the loss of profits themselves, but the loss of the greater profit he could have had. Vigil is placed in the unfavorable position of being accused of protecting his old friend. After all, Dimitri is the Don of a family bearing his surname. Penance fears that Charwick is using the trial as a way to not only punish his business rival, but to force another family out of Nuova Valsini. Doing so in the hopes that they may turn the mere presence of a mafia background into a tool to crush local businesses. To prevent this, Penance presents an amendment to the new Urban Management Act. Having seen Charwick's unfair shelf agreement and the KGCC trying to undermine the AST, in addition to them showing interest in expanding into the energy and healthcare sector, Penance has decided that they must act more forcibly. The amendment will impose tariffs on foreign goods, prevent foreign businesses from establishing monopolies on key sectors, allow some factions with former family ties into lower management levels, and issue franchise permits to family-controlled businesses. Vigil is worried it is excessive, but drastic circumstances require drastic measures. Ideally, they will be able to unite Siracusa, but Penance recognizes that only the families currently have that power. They must allow them to protect Siracusan interests while keeping them in check. For now, Vigil leaves the document unsigned on his desk. The day of the trial arrives 2 weeks after the murder. Penance acts as judge of Dimitri and calls the first witness to the stand. Tommaso tells her of how he forgot to send the Siracusa wine until the last day and hired Sam to do the urgent delivery. He then started heading to the theater to ensure it was delivered safely. Penance asks him why he replaced the Golden Prairie wine with Siracusa wine, but Tommaso blames that on the incompetence of the Golden Prairie workers. Next, she calls the police toxicology expert to the stand. The woman confirms that Paula died of cyanide poisoning and the Siracusa wine was cleared of having any trace of it, as was only found in Paula's glass. Penance then calls upon Paula's daughter, Lisil. Lisil tells the court that she saw a Caprine on the day who picked up a glass before exiting the cellar. She didn't get a good look at the person's face, but can confirm it was not a Lupo or a Perro who did it. Finally, Penance calls Elio to the stand. Elio reveals he sabotaged Verdi Winery, causing Golden Prairie to incur substantial costs after acquisition. Penance tells him that this was an act of corporate sabotage and asks him if Dimitri ordered him to do it. Elio denies this. He acted independently. He saw the abusive practices of Golden Prairie and called them out for attempting to monopolize the wine industry on the stand. Well said, but still a crime. Dimitri at this point asks to speak. Based on the testimonies today, he is not responsible for the death of Paula. However, he recognizes the illegal actions of one of his employees and offers to bear the punishment for his crime. This proclamation leads to a debate within the courtroom, and Penance announces that the verdict will be given at a later date. Unfortunately for Elio, he is arrested following the conclusion of the trial. Vigil visits him and asks him why he is still working for the family. Nuovo Volsini is far from perfect, but surely it will allow him to earn a living without having to rely on Dimitri. Elio denies this description. He is not just working for Dimitri or the family. He wishes to protect Nuovo Volsini from greedy businesses like the Golden Prairie. It is Dimitri, not Vigil, that has given him the ability to take a stand against him. Dimitri meanwhile meets with Charek. Charek hopes that Siracusa Vino will be present for next year's competition, but Dimitri has no interest. Charek takes it well and gets to the real reason he's here. The KGCC has asked him to invite Dimitri to become a partner. By the time Vigil arrives to meet with his friend, the deal has already been made. Vigil is worried his friend may have made a deal with the devil, but Dimitri isn't too worried. After all, Vigil has an amendment that will make his dealings with them much easier. Vigil and Dimitri have the same thoughts on dealing with businesses like the Golden Prairie. Vigil refuses to allow them to harm Siracusa, and Dimitri is willing to act as insurance for Vigil to make that happen. Siracusa has always looked after their own, and Dimitri has been keeping those in the family safe. One day, Dimitri is sure Vigil will achieve a Siracusa without the need for the families, but until then, he will need the help of those families to protect Siracusa from the circling vultures. The two shake hands and part on good terms. They will have plenty of dealings in the future, and now that the government and the families are united, perhaps the dream of Nuovo Volsini will be achieved. Vigil calls Penance, having made up his mind, and is now ready to sign the amended act. And that, my friends, is Crossing. Almost said Cross there, which is a very different story. Crossing was a pretty solid addition to the Siracusan storyline. From here we will have to see how they take the Siracusan storyline though. There is certainly a future where this ties a bow on the Siracusan storyline for a good number of years. With the previous Siracusan storyline focusing not just on the battle between the family and the New Order, but the battle between the Signori da Lupi, it is hard to see exactly how they move forward with only one of those present. Potentially speaking, it will be a combination of several different regions that push the story forward, with Laetania, Casimiras, and Siracusa all coming together for one massive event. Is this me hoping the story leads us in a direction where we can have more horses? Most certainly, but also, I could see it very much happening. The current geopolitical state of Terra in 1102 is, to say the least, uncertain. With Ursus on the brink of a civil war, Jan having just struck down a dragon god, and Victoria still recovering from its civil war and war against the Sorcas, much of the once prominent powers of Terra are in their waning years or just in a weakened state. I could very much see a world where the General Chamber of Commerce becomes a unifying body for Laetania, Casimiras, and Siracusa, allowing the nations to pool their resources together so that they may take on their larger and more powerful neighbors. We know that Talos too has a General Chamber of Commerce, so why doesn't Terra have a General Chamber of Commerce as well to match? All that is purely speculation, however. We can only see where things go. And with that being said, I will bid you adieu. Shout out to the wonderful members of the factory. You are the mob family to my illicit dealings, keeping me safe from the capitalist interests by keeping my priorities in sight. You are all truly wonderful. Y'all, be good people, and I will see you in the next one. Right, circling back to Lupina, I can already tell you that this is the best design they have given us since the fucking furry from chapter 16. Arknights, please, you are literally the furry gotcha game. Give us more Antro characters.